Hey everyone, this is Adi and you're listening to the Summer of Bitcoin experience. In this episode, we talk to Sivaram Dhakshinamoorthy, a Summer of Bitcoin intern from India and a contributor to libsec P256K1, a library that pretty much powers the cryptography in Bitcoin. Specifically, Shivaram worked on Schnorr batch verification interface. In simple terms, his work on batch verification would allow Bitcoin nodes to verify digital signatures in batches instead of doing it one by one as they do today. This would make block validation, transaction verification, and initial block downloads much faster. Sounds exciting? Let's hear it from Shivaram himself. Hope you enjoy it. Hey Shivaram, welcome to the Summer of Bitcoin experience. Do you want to give us a little bit of your introduction?
Yeah. Thanks for having me here. And I'm Sivaram. I am a final year undergraduate at IIT Kharagpur from Mathematics and Computing Department. I had a chance to participate in Summer of Bitcoin twice, once in 2021 and again in 2022. And it has been great. And I'm excited to talk more about it in the podcast.
All right. So let's start from the beginning. Like, how did you stumble down the Bitcoin rabbit hole? Like, when was the first time you heard about it, and what was your first impression?
Okay. The first time I heard about it, it was in the movies. So it was like when the COVID started in March 2020. I had a lot of time, so I've been binge watching TV series and movies. So I was watching this particular TV show called Silicon Valley. So there is a character called Guilfoyle. He sort of sets some sort of alarm so that it rings when Bitcoin goes below a certain price so that he can stop mining and things like that. So that was the time when I first heard Bitcoin. Then I sort of ignored it and moved on. I didn't think much about it. I thought it was sort of restricted to the Western world, and I haven't seen many people talking about Bitcoin in my friend circle. So it sort of faded away after that.
All right. And then fast forward in 2021, you may have come across Summer of Bitcoin. Like, what was that? Do you remember like hearing about Summer of Bitcoin and what made you apply to the program?
Yeah. In 2021 was like like I was applying to all the open source programs that I was getting in because like I wanted to participate in some sort of open source programs. So I was applying to GSOC, LFX, and so many other programs, and I got rejected in almost everything. And then I was also searching LinkedIn for future opportunities. Then I saw a post by someone that this is for the first time there's a new program called Summer of Bitcoin, and students get paid stipend in Bitcoin and things like that. I thought that was a scam, and I ignored it account. And after the 2 days, I saw another person make another YouTube video about Summer of Bitcoin. Then I sort of like maybe I should look into this, not completely ignore it. Then I went to the website and I was like, went through the mentors details, went to their GitHub profiles, and I was like finally convinced that this is happening. And I was like, let me apply again, and I applied after that.
And before applying, and after the Silicon Valley episode, had you heard about Bitcoin, in between, or it was just that instance when you first heard about it, and then you were applying to Summer of Bitcoin?
Yeah, as I said, like I was sort of applying to all the open source program. The LFX one, I was applying for something called Hyperledger. That is also a blockchain technology, but that was the first time I sort of started reading more about blockchains. And that time it was like Hyperledger is a private blockchain and Bitcoin is like a public blockchain. And most of the article that I read was sort of negatively on Bitcoin because it's like, it's public blockchain. So many people can see it. Companies cannot use it and stuff like that. So I sort of knew what Bitcoin was a little bit, but it was just like an overall picture, nothing more than that.
All right. So let's go further into your Summer of Bitcoin application process. So then you apply. What happens next?
Um, so yeah, in 2022, I think the process became standardized. 2021 was little, it was completely different to be honest, but I'll just explain the 2022 part. So it usually starts around January, the Summer of Bitcoin, the applications open. And once you go to their website and, you register with your university email ID, and you'll get a coding challenge. That's like the first round. In the coding challenge, it happens in InterviewBit platform, and you will be given a 2 questions, and you'll have 1 hour time limit to solve them. And I haven't attempted it, but since I was already a Summer of Bitcoin intern last year, I was allowed to skip this round. But when I talked with my friends, they sort of said that it was around in a lead code medium range questions. So you should be good to go if you're comfortable with a lead code medium questions. And once you get through this round, you will be added to the Discord group. I think Adi will sort of send you an email saying that you cleared it, and they will add you to Discord group. And in the Discord group, there'll be like so many people present. There'll be like mentors, previous year interns, yeah, the applicants who are applying along with you. And yeah, the Discord group is like so much fun. It's like so many things happening at the time. Like you will sort of read about Bitcoin together for a week or two, and there's a lot of going on. You can reach out to the people, your mentors that your project is aiming. So once this gets done, the second round will start around in mid-February. The Summer of Bitcoin, in their website, they will release the list of organizations that's participating this year. And under each organization, there will be a project idea. And you sort of have to pick a project idea and write a proposal saying like, how you will solve it, how you're the best person to solve it. Maybe you could have maybe previous experience mentioning it here. You could write like a proof of concept, add it to the proposal. And you basically have to convince the mentor that you are the best among other people who's able to complete the project. And once you submit your proposal, you can just pray to God and hope that you get selected, and you'll get I think the results will come by April 19. Yeah, it'll come in May.
So before we step into the project that you chose, whether it was last year or in 2021 or this year in 2022, let's maybe touch a bit on Bitcoin itself, right? You've participated now 2 times in Summer of Bitcoin. Your first introduction was from an episode on a TV show, and meanwhile you had heard about blockchains in general and other blockchains as well. Having understood all of that and being in the space for quite a while now, what do you feel about Bitcoin? Why is it important, and worth paying attention to?
Yeah, there are some things that I started to observe. So like I started my Summer of Bitcoin in 2021. So it has almost been like 1.3 years till now. And the things I've read some stories about, it was majorly about inflation. One of the things that I read about was somewhere in an African country, like their government they didn't really function properly. Like they didn't do all those economic reforms and stuff like that. So if the tea costs today 500 and whatever the currency unit is, by next week it will be 1,000. It basically doubles it. So your money is sort of degrading and losing its value. So, and I felt that is a little unfair, because people put a lot of effort to earn money. To me, money basically sort of represents their life force, because it's their time that they cannot get back. And just because some few people at the top are not capable enough to run a country or something, like they are literally losing their life force. And I was like, Bitcoin sort of provides a sound, incorruptible sort of platform to store your money, time, or life force, whichever you call it. And that was like the one that um, pulled me towards Bitcoin. And there are like different incidents. It started happening very frequently uh, than I imagined, because like there was this Sri Lanka also gone through a major crisis. It's recently, and there was this Russia-Ukraine war where Bitcoin was talked about. Whenever there is like a major governments are involved, like in some way, Bitcoin sort of comes into the picture.
Right. It's beautiful. I mean, the way you put it, that Bitcoin essentially preserves your life force. And on the other hand, we have fiat currency where it's, controlled, manipulated, and owned by a handful of individuals who are likely unelected. And, because of perhaps the corruption that creeps in or just their own incapability, it's the common people that have to suffer. Because of the mistakes that they make in managing the fiat currency. And on the other hand, you've got Bitcoin, which is governed by the laws of universe, primarily mathematics and physics. And it is something that is decentralized, so it's not controlled or manipulated by any handful group of individuals or even companies. And its rules are fixed, right? You cannot change it, you cannot sort of manipulate or modify it. And so that gives people a certainty, that gives people a certain medium, a stable medium to preserve their life force on, which is where the promise for Bitcoin is. Now, on one hand, like we've got Bitcoin, but then there's also so much noise in the ecosystem with so many different blockchains and tokens and whatnot. Do you have any opinions on others, and how do you separate Bitcoin from the rest?
Like, I think other coins other than Bitcoins, none of them are decentralized. They just use Bitcoin as sort of their promotional stunt or whatever, and try to scam people. Like whenever I talk with my friends, they think that, like, most of people assume that Bitcoin and Ethereum, they are very similar, just because you know it is called Bitcoin and something else is called some coin. So just because the word coin is added after that doesn't mean they're structurally same, and people aren't aware about it. So yeah, I think that is one of the major issues, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think all the other coins out there are, as you said, perhaps not so decentralized as they claim to be. And so in that sense, they are very much like securities or stocks, as we call them, where, if you're buying something, or if you're buying a token or a coin, you're essentially buying a stock of the company. And so you have to understand what that company does, what's the use case or service they're providing, and whether there is any value to that particular token or stock for it to be a good investment. On the other hand, Bitcoin is not a stock. It's not a company. There is no business plan. The only problem that it tries to solve is that of being good money. And that is it. So that's probably the main distinction between Bitcoin and everything else in the space. All right. I guess we can switch to Summer of Bitcoin. So could you tell us, like, what project did you work on last year in 2021 and this year? Was it the same organization or different?
Yeah, it was the same organization. And the organization name is LibSec P256K1. It is a cryptography. It's a C library that is used by Bitcoin for all those elliptic curve cryptographic operations. Since Bitcoin is like a decentralized application, you can't really use passwords to prove your authenticity. For example, if you're logging into your Facebook account, you just provide your password and they will know that, okay, they are the right person. But in case of Bitcoin, you can't do that, because like if you keep some sort of password thing, like everyone will know about it and they can imitate you. So Bitcoin uses a public key cryptography system to authenticate that you are the right person, and this belongs to the certain someone. So those public key cryptographic operations are implemented in this libsecp. And so whenever Bitcoin wants to create a public key or sign a transaction, it just calls this library, and this library does that and returns them.
So, what made you choose libsec P256K1 as an organization to contribute towards?
Okay. So first, when I did Summer of Bitcoin, I was sort of like completed my third year, and the last semester I had a course called Modern Algebra. Since I am a math student, it was a modern algebra course, like full abstract maths. They teach you, group theory, ring theory, and so many stuff. And it was very interesting, and I thought this is probably going to be another not so useful course that I'm going to forget in a year, and start applying for programming jobs or things like that. And so when I saw through libsec P, it had a lot of this modern algebra, group theory stuff involved, and I was surprised to see the applications of it. And that sort of was like, I'm going to choose this project. And since then, I've been involving in more and more. And I've also started appreciating math more than how I've been in my first year. So it's always sort of like computer science is first and maths like second sort of thing going on. But I've come to realize all this stuff.
So tell us more about the specific project ideas that you've worked on, in both your summers with Summer of Bitcoin.
Okay. So in the first Summer of Bitcoin, libsec is little, at least to me, it is hard to understand. So I think the first Summer of Bitcoin was around like 2.5 months, and there's a lot of learning involved. It was more on the learning focus than the project implementation kind of thing. So I was only able to make like a small changes. I was just going through the code and seeing wherever I was able to contribute. So it was mostly like fixing small bugs and making some beautifying the printing stuff, like printing benchmarks and things like that. And once in the next Summer of Bitcoin, like I saw this project idea called batch verification interface. And I was like, after seeing it, I was surprised that like people allowed students to work on it. I thought maybe this involves consensus and stuff, like things like that. And they won't be willing to give it to a student. So once I saw that idea, I was like, I already had an internship offer from a company. I sort of canceled. I just mailed them. I wouldn't be able to, I won't be able to do it. And I was like, I'm going to apply for this project idea. And, I applied, and luckily I got selected. And yeah, it has been great. Like, do you want me to talk more about the idea, or like what
Yes.
batch verification is? Okay.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead. Let's understand what batch verification interface means and why is it an important deal, and what are the benefits to the cryptography that Bitcoin uses.
Okay. So whenever a user, let's say I want to send maybe 0.2 Bitcoin to Adi, I will send like a request on my phone. Maybe I have an app or something. I'll just put Adi's address and say like send 0.2 Bitcoins to him. So what happens is that will sort of create a transaction, and that will be sent to the all Bitcoin nodes. The node has to verify each and every transaction. So it has to literally loop through. Let's say there are 5,000 transactions. You sort of write like a for loop and go through each and every transaction and call the verify function. If this is valid, if this is valid, if this is valid, then it be added. But with batch verify, what you can do is you can put all those 500 or 5,000 transactions into the batch verify function, and that will return. If all of them are valid, it'll just return, yeah, everything is true. And if one of them fails, it'll just say, one of them is wrong. And so it sort of really speeds up the block validation process. And one more advantage is like when you're first joining a Bitcoin network, you sort of your computer has to download the whole Bitcoin blockchain. And I think it right now it's very huge. Like when I try to Google and see like how much time it takes, it's like if you have like a 2 MB per second internet connection speed, it takes like 20 hours to download the whole blockchain. But in practical, it's probably going to take more. And maybe after maybe like 10 years and people sort of move to Schnorr signature and batch verification is there. Once this verifications are speed up, this time will sort of reduce. And yeah, it makes the verification process faster than the normal one.
Amazing. So if I may summarize, every time a node receives a set of transactions from the mempool, which is where all the transactions sort of are collected and are broadcasted and collected from, a node will be able to essentially verify and validate those transactions in batches, as opposed to what is happening today, where they have to validate it one by one. And
yes, exactly.
Even when you are downloading the Bitcoin blockchain for the first time, if you're running a node, then you have to essentially start from the first block, then the first transaction that Satoshi created, and then validate all the subsequent transactions till the present moment. And batch verification, the project that you are helping with, will allow for those nodes to verify and validate those transactions much more quickly, because now they would be doing it in batches.
Yes, exactly. But one issue with this verifying the transaction from starting to end is because like most of the transaction signatures that are in Bitcoin blockchain is ECDSA. So this batch verification works only on the Schnorr signatures that was recently introduced. I think it was activated in last year, November. So this speed up, it will probably take like few decades, I guess.
Sure.
And people should start using Schnorr. Even right now, only SegWit is popular. So Taproot hasn't, not many people are using Taproot at least.
Right. So for those of you who may be hearing Schnorr, Taproot, and all these terms for the first time, they are just different address types and using different cryptography for receiving or sending Bitcoin. And batch verification works on just a new type of signatures or addresses, that are enabled through what is called as Schnorr signatures. And so batch verification, for batch verification to have massive impacts, you need a lot more people on Bitcoin or using Bitcoin to be using Taproot addresses, for example, or Schnorr, that are based on Schnorr signatures.
Yes.
All right. So tell us about your mentor. You've worked with with your mentor 2 times now, and how was your experience working with him?
Yeah, I have worked with 2 different people. So I had different mentors for both Summer of Bitcoin, and like most Summer of Bitcoin people that I meet, they are unbelievably helpful. Like I literally can't believe they are willing to help this much. For example, the 2021 mentor, he was Jesse Posner. Like I knew zero cryptography. Like I was making very little progress in Summer of Bitcoin, and he was still like he was helping me and literally teaching me cryptography terms for the first, like the basics and stuff. And once Summer of Bitcoin ended, I sort of knew that I didn't make much contributions. So I asked him, like, would you be able to help me further? I know Summer of Bitcoin ended, but if you are willing, like, would you be able to help me? He was like, he was happy to do that too. So till to this day, I have like bi-weekly meeting with my mentor, Jesse Posner. It's like 1.3 years. We still meet twice a week and talk about Bitcoin, talk about the stuff that he's working on, I'm working on, and what are my plans after I graduate and things like that. And for last year, 2022, I had a mentor, Jonas Nick. Jonas Nick, he's like very, very good. Like you have some doubt or something, like I'll be stuck at some few things for like 2 or 3 days and not be able to do what to do. And he'll just come in the meeting and he'll just solve those doubts in like 5-10 minutes. And like one thing that sort of stood out was once I implemented the batch verification, and it was slower than the normal one. It was supposed to be faster, but like I didn't know what to do. I was like, I thought my whole project is gone. It's not, it's unsalvageable. But he sort of came in and he did some optimizations. He was like, typing keywords. Like he was just typing keys for like 10-15 minutes, and instantly it became like 20-30% faster. And like, yeah, like people are very talented and they are very, very helpful. And even for my final year master's thesis, they sort of, gave me some ideas that I could work on. They're like, you could try this, try this. So I think, even though I think Summer of Bitcoin is sort of like a program to connect you. It's not like one Summer of Bitcoin over, so you lose contact with your mentor and go a different ways. So yeah.
That's awesome. So, Shivaram, what are your plans now? Like, what are you working on currently? And, how do you think about your future contributions to Bitcoin?
On something called hack spec implementation for Frost. Since I'm in a final year, I can work on a project for like for like half credits or something. So I thought, I'll be doing a Bitcoin project, and it's called Frost hack spec implementation. Frost is like a multi-signature scheme where, uh, I don't want to explain multi-signature right now completely, but what usually does is like if three people want to own a Bitcoin together, they sort of create each and every keys for separately and they sign it and sort of add it out. But in Frost, you have like a single key that is divided between people. It is basically like a new way to do this multi-signature, and implementing that in Hackspec will sort of give you a proofs. For example, whenever something new is coming into Bitcoin, you have to write something called a BIP. BIP is called Bitcoin Improvement Proposal, and that would be sent around to the community. Everyone will review it, and they'll say if it gets enough support, it'll get implemented. In this BIP, usually the algorithms and things like that, it'll have like a pseudocode written. And the issue with this is you can't really test the pseudocode, and people might misunderstand the pseudocode while implementing their own version. So if you implement in Hackspec, it'll have like a very proper definition for this pseudocodes, and you can literally use convert it to a different language like Coq and prove that the signing algorithms are true. So this sort of gives like more security and makes the BIP less error prone when other people are looking at it and implementing.
Interesting. So what else? Is there anything else that you're excited about Bitcoin? Maybe at the technical level, that's the technical development that's coming up.
Like I've been interested in Xiaomi Mint, the Fediment eCashment for a long time. So I'm also excited like how that is going to play out. So I sort of follow it whenever the news or things that comes up. I sort of keep an eye on that. And I also heard that the Frost BIP is in the first draft. Like my mentor has written like a first draft for Frost BIP, and I am looking forward to reading more about it. And yeah, like other than this, LibSecP stuff, I like this Fediment and how that is going to play out.
Nice. So let's maybe try and wrap up this conversation with with what advice would you give to beginner developers, your batchmates who have joined us today, on like how do they get started with Bitcoin? What are the best resources to learn about it, and how should they go about contributing to an open source Bitcoin project?
Okay. I have collected a few resources. I'll just put it in the chat box. There is this website called trybitcoin.satsi.dev. It's sort of like a 20-minute exercise that introduces you to Bitcoin. I think this is like a good way to get a feel of things and get like a basic overview of the whole stuff. This is just like 20 minutes. You can literally do it after the meeting also. Once you sort of do this, there is something called 21 days of Bitcoin. It's like a mailing list for next 21 days. You'll get an email explaining you some concepts of Bitcoin. I used this when I joined Summer of Bitcoin in 2021, and it really explained things. The explanations are really good and very easy to understand. And once you sort of learn this stuff, there is one more video, I think, by 3 Blue 1 Brown. 3 Blue 1 Brown is like a very good channel for if you are especially a math student. Like, he sort of dives deep into how Bitcoin works, and like not in the complete technical level, but in the conceptual level, like how the ledger is kept and stuff like that. Then other than that, I think there is one more thing called learnmeabitcoin.com. I think I would say the first 3 resources that I gave would give you an overall idea. That would be enough for you to choose your own organization, look at the projects and things like that. Once you have chosen a project, you sort of have to go deeper into a specific portion of Bitcoin that is related to your project. Maybe it can be a wallet, or it can be about the signatures and scripts and so many things like that. And Learn Me a Bitcoin sort of has all these sections. You can go into the relevant section and try to learn more about it. And and also the Twitter account of Summer of Bitcoin posts a lot of things for this open source, beginners for open source. I've seen so many posts that is helpful, so you can also follow that.
All right. And if people want to follow you and your work, what's the best place to follow that?
Yeah, I am active on Twitter. I go by the name Shift2R. So Shift2R, I use it everywhere. Twitter. Twitter is the only place
GitHub.
where GitHub, but GitHub mostly has codes, and I also have this newsletter called shift2r.substack.com. I sort of try to document my process, Summer of Bitcoin process, the week 1 and week 2. But unfortunately, I have written only about the first 2 weeks, and the later weeks I sort of have it in my material. I'll probably publish it around December when I get vacations, so that it'll be helpful for the people who start in Jan. But yeah, like in these 2 places, you can find my blogs and the work that I've been doing.
Thank you, Sivaram, for joining us today and sharing your experience with Summer of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. It has been a pleasure talking to you after a long time.
Thank you for listening to the Summer of Bitcoin experience. I would love to get your thoughts on what else would you like to hear from these student developers, and how to make this the most valuable podcast for getting started with Bitcoin open source development. Write to us at hello@summerofbitcoin.org. Can you do us a small favor? Go online and share this episode with at least one friend who you think would benefit from this episode. Until next time.